Hey everyone! Today I'll be discussing Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Book 2 in the Harry Potter series. As usual, I have my three notes prior to the actual review in the video. Number one is that this will be spoiler filled. Number two, yes, I will be gushing about the book, but I'll also be criticizing it, just pointing out some things that didn't totally work. So if you know you are sensitive to people criticizing things that you absolutely love, just save yourself some trouble and you can click out of the video. I don't mind. Just wanted you guys to know. And then number three, I want to once again be very explicit in that I stand with the trans community and that I am very disgusted with what J.K. Rowling has been saying for a few years, all the ranting and raving that she's done on Twitter, and just all the misinformation that she spread. So, yes, I feel like I have that responsibility to make that explicit before all of my review videos, just so, everybody knows that I love the series, but I don't love J.K. Rowling's point of view. Unlike last time, I'm going to skip the summary portion because I suck at giving summaries and I've realized it's going to get harder every single book. So I'm just going to stop for now. This You're here because you've read the book and you know what happens, because this is a spoiler filled review. So I'm going to skip that. And also, this video does not need to be as long as the last one. So I'm going to be as concise as possible this time. I actually really love this book. I know that's not the popular opinion of it. I think from what I see online, it seems like many Harry Potter fans rank this last in the series. And I get it. Maybe the plot isn't as weighted as it is in the later books, and maybe it doesn't have that fun whimsiness of book one, but I don't know. To me, it's not a filler novel. I think there's a lot to appreciate in this book, and I've always enjoyed rereading it. I know when I was a kid, like I said in my last video, this was the first book in the Harry Potter series that I personally read. My very first copy of the book is actually right up here next to my Funko Pop of Dobby. I wish I could bring it down. It's a little too fragile right now, but yeah, it's the binding is torn. All the pages are yellowed. Like I feel like even dog earing it, it's just gonna break the page. It's so old, but loved. And yeah, I would say that it's maybe one of my most reread in the series. Especially when I was younger, I feel like I would go through that every month or so. I don't know. I clearly had no life when I was a kid. But yeah, so I have a lot of good things to say about Chamber of Secrets. First of all, I love the atmosphere in Chamber of Secrets. While Sorcerer's Stone was much more lighthearted and fun and adventurous and just the first book in this magical world, book two becomes a lot darker and the atmosphere is almost gothic in tone. You have just the setting itself, Hogwarts, the castle. I feel like most gothic stories take place in this big mysterious castle. Hogwarts is the perfect setting for that. And then near the end of the book, a lot of the story takes place in Hogwarts in lockdown. So if you could just imagine being a student, not only is Hogwarts just on a regular day pretty big and looming and has all these rooms that are yet to be discovered and explored, now you have everyone in lockdown. Now the halls are completely empty, everything's a little spookier, and you have this mysterious creature, this basilisk, potentially, getting close to killing students, and people are they're getting petrified. So it's just, you could just feel this tension, and I think that is definitely one of the things that makes this book stand out. To me, Chamber of Secrets is the perfect rainy day book because it's like cloudy and creepy and a little disquieting. And yeah, I love that element. Maybe just because I love gothic stories. Yet another way that Chamber of Secrets sort of gestures to the Gothic tradition is in the use of ghosts. So they're still side characters in this book as they were in Sorcerer's Stone, but they have scenes for themselves. Different chapters in here are dedicated to them, in particular the Death Day party. So that's Nearly Headless Nick's celebration of the day that he died. And he's desperate to try to join the headless hunt, which refuses him because he is in fact not headless. He is nearly headless, and so he can't really participate in the games and different activities that the headless hunt engages in. So he's bitter about that. Another element that could be seen as Gothic is the book's preoccupation with death, from Moaning Myrtle, of course. Like I said, pretty much any of the ghost characters, because their whole existence revolves around death. You also have the mysterious warnings from Dobby to Harry about how he should not go back to Hogwarts. Even when he's at Hogwarts, Dobby goes out of his way to try to get Harry kicked out and to go back to the Dursleys, which he never, does because he never wants to. But he's just so determined, and as a reader, you're trying to figure out, like, why? Why is he so interested in getting Harry out of Hogwarts? Like, this is supposed to be the safe place. Does that mean Hogwarts isn't safe? So the book finds this way of building suspense, which I think is really masterful, at least in Chamber of Secrets, that to me didn't totally work in Sorcerer's Stone, but I think it shines in this book, and it's not given that much credit. Last time I gushed about Neville and Hagrid as two of my favorite characters, and this time I'm going to have to add Dobby to that list. I love Dobby. You can see my Funko Pop up there. It's funny, my grandma said that he looks like my grandpa, which is a little true. But it fits because I love my grandpa and I love Dobby. So perfect. Anyway, Dobby. Dobby is amazing. Dobby the house elf. I just love seeing characters find their voices, find their own personal freedom. In this case, it's kind of literal. Dobby gets a sock in this like very cute, clever twist at the end where Harry gives Lucius a sock, and then knowing that Lucius is just going to throw it at Dobby, thus freeing Dobby, because house elves are only free when their masters give them clothing, which complicates the idea of laundry, but that's another thing. Here we really see just how loyal Dobby is to Harry, and we see why exactly he is so loyal. It's because when Harry defeated Voldemort, the wizarding world entered a time where house elves were given just a little bit more respect. They're still house elves, they're basically slaves, but they just have a few more rights. They're not treated like vermin, like Dobby says. They're treated a little bit better, which, is horrible, but it just gives him more purpose in the book to explore this concept of just another way that the wizarding world discriminates, that does reflect the real world too, sadly. But yeah, I love that aspect. Yet another thing that I love about Chamber of Secrets is that we finally get to see the Burrow, where all the Weasleys live. I love the dynamic between how Harry is going to the Burrow and he's amazed and he finds their home brilliant, because it's really the first time that he's ever seen what a full wizarding home looks like. He's grown up amongst muggles. He might be a wizard himself, but he lives with the Dursleys. So to him, the Dursleys and the muggle world is kind of boring, kind of average, but he sees just what magic can bring and he's amazed by it. Meanwhile, Arthur Weasley is just amazed by everything muggle related, and I love that element in the story. It just makes him and all the Weasleys even more endearing. He is curious about bus stops. In the movie, it's rubber ducks. I think that's almost a better detail than what's in the book, but yeah, his just caringness for people that are different than him, I think it just lets you into how the Weasley kids were raised. They were raised to be loving and accepting of others, even if they come from different circumstances. And I think Harry feels completely welcomed in this environment, whereas at home with the Dursleys, if you can even really call that his home, because he's so ostracized, he's just made fun of constantly. He's not welcomed at all, and they're blood, but the Weasleys embrace him as their own kid. So I love the Weasleys. I love the Burrow. I love all the little details in the house. I love the idiosyncrasies of every character. I think they're all distinct and funny and just warm. I just, I sort of wish that Harry was able to stay at the Burrow even longer because I love that chapter. A sweet moment that happens at the end of his visit at the Burrow is that Harry tells Ron that this is the best house I've ever been in, and Ron starts blushing. And it's sweet because it's just a nice, honest moment between two friends, but it also sort of illustrates how maybe to Ron, this is the first time that anyone's ever complimented him on his humble home and his humble beginnings. You know, his family is poor. And so for Harry to just not care about that, but to only see the love between all the Weasleys that he is so deprived of, it almost is like their friendship is really solidified in this moment. And it's a lovely, lovely scene. And while I'm on the topic of Ron Weasley, I know this is not going to be a movie review, but I feel the need to point out that this book is, and in this reread, is when I really start to note how much book Ron and movie Ron are different. I mean, I do love the movies, but they just chip away at Ron's fullness as a character. In this book, you'd be surprised if you've only seen the movie and this is the first time you're reading the book, you'd be surprised that it's actually Ron who knows about parcel tongue, who knows about the term mudbloods. He's the one who's explaining all of these to Hermione, which makes sense because Hermione, like Harry, was raised by muggles. So, of course, Ron, who has only known what it's like to be raised by a magical family, of course, Ron is the one who knows all of this. But in the movie, it's Hermione who knows all of this. And I love Hermione, you know, she's amazing, brilliant, intelligent. I love that. But give Ron his moment to shine. I feel like the movie just made him this blabbering idiot, this one-liner type of character, and it just gave all his dialogue and his shining moments to other characters. Something I really want to give Chamber of Secrets credit for is how it contextualizes evil, or you know, the bad guys, the villains, or just anybody that we've up to this point have only seen in this one-dimensional bully role. And so the characters in particular are Argus Filch, Draco Malfoy, and obviously Voldemort slash Tom Marvolo Riddle. Even though it contextualizes them, to me it never comes across as like apologizing for anything that any of them have done or excusing any of their bad behavior, but it's a good way of letting readers know, and again, readers at such a young age know that everybody comes from somewhere, which is a running theme in the book, that yes, everybody comes from somewhere, they come from different circumstances, but it's how you react to those circumstances that determine really who you are, not how you're born, but the choices you make and, you know, who you are in the end after those choices. In the case of Draco Malfoy, we meet his father, Lucius. And if you think Draco is bad, then Lucius is even worse. He is a known abuser of his house elves. He obviously is a pureblood elitist, as we already know. He's just rude to his son, too. And so it makes you think, my gosh, like this is what Draco grew up around. Like he seems to just be mimicking his father. He should know better. He is in school learning and, you know, sitting in classes with students who are different than him. He should, at this point, start to be more open-minded and see how his family has sort of made him into this model of them, this mini Lucius. And, you know, he should know better. But it just gives you another side to his story. You know, he's not just mean because he doesn't like people. He's mean because maybe that's the only thing he's ever known at home. And reading further in the series, of course, you find out just how troubled this kid is. Again, he's a bully. He's awful to everyone around him. I can't stand him as a character. I'm not, a Draco stan, but yeah, I just think that knowing about Lucius, we just see a little bit more into why Draco is the way he is. And then in the case of Filch, again, he's a bad guy. He like dreams of the day when he can return to punishing his students by like tying them up from their ankles from the ceiling. I mean, he's crazy. He's like sadistic and weird, but we learn that he's a squib, and that he's trying to enroll in a quick spell course, which basically teaches squibs, or maybe not even just squibs, like people who maybe aren't as skilled in magic, they feel embarrassed about their lack of powers and how bad they are at spells. And so he wants to take this course. And Harry in the book even sort of recognizes that, oh, maybe like, I don't know, maybe I should feel bad for him a little bit, because it is kind of sad that this grown man, he's so grumpy all the time. Like, maybe he just is jealous of all the younger people around him who can learn magic and are so good. Maybe he feels just bad about himself. Maybe his rudeness comes from a place of insecurity. Again, Filch should absolutely know better. He's way older than Draco. But again, it just sort of contextualizes everything. It's not just evil in a vacuum. You see how it festers and makes people do certain things. Again, wrong choices are wrong choices. Bullying is bullying. Like Filch, I don't even know why Dumbledore still has him working at the school, but yeah, the quick spell scene and the way that he reacted to Harry finding out about his letter to up from quick spell, like it's just kind of sad. I felt bad for him. But yeah, still also not a Filch stan by any means. But yeah, it's another way that the book succeeds, at least to me it did, in making these characters more three-dimensional. And finally, in the case of Voldemort slash Tom Riddle, we see who Voldemort was as a teenager. We learned that he was a star student at Hogwarts. He had friends, which is a little bit shocking, but yeah, he had friends. He was very charming, good looking, not snake looking. He was actually handsome. And yeah, we also learned that he had a very troubled home life. He hated going back home, much like Harry. Actually, that's another thing. Harry finds out that he's much more similar to Voldemort than he ever thought that he was. And it's such an interesting dynamic to have a character realize that actually they are much more similar to the person that they thought was pure evil than they ever noted. So yeah, always really interesting to have that take in a book. I love complex characters. I don't think anyone's purely good and purely bad. I think everyone's just a weird mixture of both. And I think this theme of, contextualizing people fits into the very famous Dumbledore quote from this book. In my edition, it's on page 333. And Dumbledore, I think everybody knows this quote. He says to Harry, "It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." Yeah, so it's not really how we're born, but who we choose to be over time, how we respond to the world around us and our negative and positive circumstances in life. How we react to them is just more important than how we're born, because we have no choice in that. We didn't decide to be born a certain way. We just are. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant thing to put, again, in a middle grade book. I'm very thankful that I came across these themes so early on. I think it opened up my worldview and helped me as a reader. And something else that the book taught me at a young age that I'm very grateful for, because it's become even more relevant today with powerful people, is about corruption, strangely enough. So Harry, Ron, and Hermione, they, to me, are confronted with their first case of corruption, like their innocence is kind of shattered in that moment. And it's when Gilderoy Lockhart, he confesses that actually he's not actually the one who did all these great things that he's famous for. He didn't really write any of the books. He just took credit for other people's work because obviously, like, he's good looking. No one would read a book by some ugly guy who did this amazing thing. They would read it though if a handsome guy did it. And it's icky and gross, and I think it shatters Harry and Ron in that moment. But I'm sure you can think of many celebrities, many powerful people who fit that description exactly. And, to discover this as a young person when I did, and for anybody just reading this for the first time, it's a really important lesson. It's again like sort of shattering your innocence a little bit because the world isn't as good as you once thought it was. There are a lot of successful people who are successful for the wrong reasons and are not really even very talented, but they have money. And, it also gets you thinking about what is success. Is money really the best sign of a person who is successful? I don't know, but I mean, the answer is no, but it just gets you thinking. And I really appreciate that about this book. On to the criticisms. Number one is that I've always thought it was weird how Hermione was so in love with Gilderoy Lockhart. She's like supposed to be the logical, rational one of the trio. And in this book, she's just like blindsided by, I guess, his good looks, his fame. And, sure, she's 12 years old. It's normal for anybody at that age to just have a dumb crush on somebody who ends up being even dumber than you ever suspected they were. But it just doesn't really feel like it would be a thing that Hermione would do. Like, it seems out of character. Another detail that doesn't seem totally in line with who the character is, and in this case it's Harry, is in the scene in the very beginning when he's escaping from the Dursleys' house, thanks to the Weasleys' Ford Anglia. He forgets Hedwig, or he's about to forget Hedwig. He's just like, "Oh, I forgot Hedwig. I have to go back." And it's like, how do you forget Hedwig? Like, she's your beloved pet owl. And also, if I'm, correct here, and if I'm remembering correctly, Hedwig up to that point in the book had been making a bunch of noise. Like, I'm pretty sure Vernon had to go up and like knock on his door and tell him like, please get your owl to quiet down because my guests are hearing this noise. Like, Hedwig has been banging on her cage the whole time. So I don't know, maybe it's in the chaos and confusion of the moment that he forgot Hedwig, but that also just did not make sense. Another detail that didn't become obvious to me until this reread was, and I mentioned this already, is that Tom Riddle had close, intimate friends. Where did they go in the series? Like, how come Harry, Ron, or Hermione, or anybody else didn't bother to, go investigating who those friends were? Like, surely they are still alive. Well, maybe I'm giving Voldemort too much credit for, like, keeping his friends alive. Like, I guess he has no problems killing those who are closest to him, but I don't know, maybe that could have been like an element that would have been cool to explore in like book 6. I know that's when the Horcruxes are mentioned, and obviously in book 7. I feel like that's an element that would have been really fascinating. And I feel like it was just a missed opportunity, unless I'm totally mistaken and I've just forgotten it. And, during this reread, I will come across those friends again. I don't know. I don't remember them being in the series or ever talked about ever again. So yeah, when I came across that line, I had to pause and I was like, wait a minute, he had friends? Like, that would have been like something to really handle in later books, to mention at least again throughout the series, but they didn't. Of course, we have to talk about all of the convenient plot points that happen at the end. I like the twist that Tom Riddle this whole time is actually Voldemort. I like the scene in the book and the movie where, he just writes Tom Marvel a riddle and then he scrambles the letters and it says, I am Lord Voldemort. I remember the first time that I read that scene and then saw it in the movie. It was just like I was mind blown. But, I think that still is a cool scene that holds up. But Fawkes the Phoenix has all the powers that Harry conveniently needs to get out of the Chamber of Secrets. Fawkes has super strength, so he can carry a lot of weight, convenient for Harry, Ron, and Gilderoy to escape the chamber. He brings the Sorting Hat, which just happens to have the sword of Gryffindor, another convenience, because the sword is made of a metal that kills basilisks. Of course, right? Of course. And then the basilisk venom, just so conveniently, also is a thing that destroys the diary, because as we know, the diary is a Horcrux, and the basilisk venom is one of the only things that could destroy a Horcrux. So, convenient. And then just this whole thing where Tom Riddle just spends so much time discussing his life story when he could just kill Harry. I get it, there needs to be a moment where he reveals just what he's been doing, his plan. There has to be a moment when the reader gets that conclusion. But just realistically speaking, a real villain would not have a discussion at the end. He would just go and kill Harry or whoever it is that he's been chasing this whole time. So yeah, there are just too many conveniences at the end for my liking, that can be a little bit cheesy even upon reread, even as someone who loves the series and this book. I can never truly forgive all of the conveniences that happen. But they're there. And yeah, I think that is all that I have to say about Chamber of Secrets. Despite the few, I think I didn't have as many criticisms for this book, but despite the few that I did have, I don't know, I still really like Chamber of Secrets. Not my favorite in the series, but certainly not in last place either. It is fun, mysterious, gothic. I just really like all the backstories that it explores. We learn a little bit more about Hagrid too, I didn't mention that. But yeah, I really enjoy this book, and I cannot wait to finally reread Prisoner of Azkaban. I'm excited to see, how I respond to it this time as a 28-year-old, if all the twists will hold up or not. So thank you for watching once again. Stay tuned to my Prisoner of Azkaban review coming soon. And yeah, like and subscribe if you wish to do so, and see you next time. Bye!